right now there's been a lot of things going. Ever since Medjugorje, there's been like a whole resurgence of visionaries in the United States, and even in Cincinnati we have a whole big thing going on of visionaries and stuff like that. I think it's good to try and use some spiritual discernment, and a simple test would be, is it consistent with the Scripture, or are you hearing weird stuff? Like I heard of a visionary in Long Island, I believe it was, that said that Jesus wasn't the Christ and stuff like that. Well, that doesn't pass the smell test. You can, like, you know, walk away from that one. I mean, you know, when the minute a visionary says they don't like Jesus, you know, it's like, you know, they're out of it. Another thing is, what are they advocating? Like in Medjugorje, what I understand is that the vision is advocating conversion and prayer. So would that be of God or of the devil? Let me see. You know?
Right.
So you look at, is it consistent with the Bible and what the Bible teaches, and is it advocating good, or is it advocating harm? And that would be a good test of it.
But you wrote in your book that God has sent throughout the ages emissaries of different sorts. It could be the Blessed Mother, it could be anybody, to help bring us back to Jesus, to God.
Yep. Many of them, and even us, have been touched by them and didn't even know it. Like, how many of us, the faith that we have, we caught from like a grandmother, for example, or an aunt, or a Sunday school teacher? So you know what I mean? In a sense, God has inspired those people to be that special emissary to us. But God is working. I asked, why doesn't God do something really big and convince everybody and put it to rest? You know, and my idea was like sort of turn the sky orange, and then like in flaming letters, believe in God or else, or something like that, you know. And, I mean, who could dispute it, you know?
Right.
And they said, that's coercion. God doesn't do coercion. It's got to be free choice.
Because that's the tremendous gift he gave us.
Yeah.
That's why he loved us so much.
Yeah. And that's what we're here to learn about. How do you exercise that choice? You know, and every minute of the day is an opportunity to make those choices.
But obviously, and people would argue, everything you need to know is within that Bible. As he said, everything to convert is in the Bible, but he gave you this experience. You're back, you're talking to people about it, which will probably save who knows how many souls out there through your books.
Well, I hope one at least.
And through maybe this program.
Yeah.
There have been other people with similar experiences to you. So just because it's not in the Bible doesn't mean God can't reach out and say, look, wake up. You're going down that slippery slope.
God is moving in powerful ways. They told me that this was a time of great spiritual awakening, because God does not want to punish us or condemn us. God wants conversion, to be the people of God that God created us to be. So God is moving in powerful ways. Near-death experiences is just one tiny little way that God is working, but there's all kinds of like things going on in terms of charismatic renewals in the churches and things like that. It's just endless. The way that God is stirring things up. But what's the reception to these things? Is it just the preaching to the choir, or are people actually being converted? That's the real issue.
Now, you were able to ask him countless questions, and of course everybody's going to read about it when they get your book, My Descent into Death by Howard Storm. You finished talking with Jesus and with the angels, and then they tell you what? It's time to go back?
Oh, it was very disappointing, because they said that I had to come back to this world. I said I wanted to go to heaven. They said, no, you got to come back to this world and live this stuff. And I said, I don't want to come back to this world. And we had a huge argument, because he said the world's full of cruelty and ugliness and awful people and evil, and why would you send me back to a world like that? And they said, well, you know, those things are there, but there's also goodness and loving people and kindness and beauty in the world, and whatever it is we seek, we will find. So if we seek beauty, we'll find beauty. If we seek loving people, that's the nice thing about going on the Christian walk. There's all the neat people you meet, you know.
Right.
But anyhow, we had this huge argument, and we talked about forgiveness and prayer and all these things, and ultimately I thought I had something that would allow me to go to heaven. I said, you can't send me back to the world, because I will die of a broken heart if you do. Because now that I have known you in your love, speaking of Jesus and the angels, I could not bear to ever be away from you again. I absolutely meant this, and they knew I meant it. And they said, haven't you been paying attention? We've always been with you. We always will be with you. And I said, but I never saw you before, I never heard you, I never felt you. I mean, when I go back, it's going to be like that again, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, pretty soon, it'll be like you don't exist. And I won't know you. And I said, but there is a way to know us. And I said, how? And I said, that if I prayed, if I confessed my sins, which I like to think of as coming clean with God, you know, just laying your cards out on the table, you know, and prayed to God and left time to listen and feel God, which is like, be quiet, be still, you know, wait on the Lord. They said, sometimes you would know we're with you. And they've kept that promise. And so sometimes I feel their presence.
So
I've had some experiences too, but...
So you said, okay, then I think I can go back?
Yeah.
And then?
And with that I was back, and to my horror, I was right back in that body that had been in such terrible shape.
Lying on a hospital bed. What happened?
And, immediately upon me coming back, the nurse who had been in the room a little while earlier and said there was no doctor, came back into the room and said, a doctor has arrived at the hospital, we're going to do the surgery right away. And they evicted my wife from the room, and they prepped me and did the surgery that I needed.
So they performed the surgery on you, and you're back in recovery, and you wake up. How do you deal with all this when you're back?
Well, it's a huge dilemma because I knew that what I had experienced was fantastic, to say the least. I mean, incredible. Meaning, who would believe me? Incredible. And when I tried to tell my wife and other people, it was incredible. They didn't believe me. They thought it was a delusion or hallucination or something like that. And for a while, that caused me to sort of withdraw from wanting to deal with people because it was, and I'd pray to God, like, if you gave me this experience and nobody wants it, then why did you give it to me? And why'd you give me the memory of it? Because I think a lot of people have these experiences, but they don't remember. I know several people that have had experiences, but they say, I can't quite remember it.
Yeah.
But I have a vivid memory in mind.
Vivid detail.
Yeah.
But you're laying in there, and you have this feeling, or hear this voice that says, get some airline tickets, you're going home over the weekend or Monday or whenever it was,
Yeah.
in a few days. And you didn't imagine that could be possible because you had just had a major operation.
Yeah, that was on Tuesday, and I'd had the surgery on Saturday night.
But your wife comes in, you tell her to go get the tickets, and...
Yeah, she goes, I mean, this is all so bizarre, people won't believe it, but it's the truth, absolutely. She walks out in the hall, goes to the payphone, calls collect her mommy and daddy in Iowa City, Iowa, and says, we're in trouble, I need a couple $1,000, we got to come home. They said, give us your phone number, we'll call you right back. They called their bank, their banker, and he said, what a coincidence, I just came back from Paris and we had an emergency and I had to wire money over there and I know how to do it. Tell it'll be at such and such an address in 10 minutes. You know, if you ever try to get money in a foreign country, you know it's like weeks. I mean, it's impossible.
Right.
But this banker knew how to do it like now. My wife comes back into the room. She says, I've talked to my parents. They're sending the money. I'll be back in an hour. She leaves, comes back in about an hour with 2 TWA airline tickets to go back to the United States on Monday morning, which is what I told her to do. And I said, what in the world have you done? She said, you told me to get the tickets. And I said, yeah, but why did you do it? That's crazy. I'm sick. I'm going to be here for a month. You know, I can't go home. But I did get well enough to come back to the United States because I needed the attention of an American hospital.
But you had a guardian angel visit you in the hospital before you left.
Oh, yeah, actually several different ones. But the...
One was came in the form of a young doctor.
That was the one that I was most fond of. He was in his early 20s, blonde, short hair, wearing white short sleeve scrub, white pants, white shoes, and a white belt. And we had a long conversation, but basically he told me that he was going to watch over me, but I might never see him again, which I thought was pretty weird. Like,
and he walked into the room, it lit up, it was bright.
Yeah.
And when he left...
The room went back to dark again.